All right, all right. Okay. Good afternoon. Oh, well, it's evening time now. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. It's 5:02. Folks are still trickling in, but we will just go ahead and get started. My name is KD. I am the Fair Chance community organizer with Legal Aid at Work. I am a formerly incarcerated individual. I am excited to be here. This work is important to me. And yes, we have a fantastic panel planned here for you guys. We have a fantastic agenda. We'll give that a preview in a second. And right now, let's let folks introduce themselves that you see right here. Stacy, go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Stacy Villalobos and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a staff attorney at Legal Aid at Work. I work with KD. And Legal Aid at Work is a workers' rights organization that's based in San Francisco, but works all across California on employment issues. And I specifically work on racial economic justice issues and represent job seekers with arrest and conviction records who are being discriminated against with those records.
Felicia?
Yeah.
Felicia? Sorry for mispronouncing.
Good evening, everybody. Felicia Espinosa. I'm with Root and Rebound, she, her, ella. I lead our Fresno reentry women's work and am a senior staff attorney with Root and Rebound. And here we focus on women who are formerly incarcerated in the Central Valley, which is near and dear to my heart because it's my hometown. So thank you for sharing this space with us and being here to learn and grow from each other. And I'm very honored to introduce some of our panelists in the future too. I'll kick it over to Rita.
Hi, I'm Rita Himes. I'm a staff attorney at Legal Services for Prisoners with Children, and we're providing tech support, so you won't see me, but very welcome, and we're happy to be helping present this webinar.
Okay. Thank you so much. I also want to let everyone know, as right before I preview the agenda with you, we have several special guests with us today. You guys will be introduced to some of those guests in a second. I just want to give a big shout out to some of our breakout room leaders. Thank you, Ivana and Molly and Jennifer, for helping us with the breakout rooms, and Deborah. We really appreciate that. So you guys will meet them when you get to your breakout rooms. And you guys will get introduced to our other two special guests in a minute. And with that, so on the agenda for today, what we will be going through, you guys will hear about real experiences from people with convictions. It's going to be very important to listen to their stories. We're going to go through a very interactive, deep dive, Know Your Rights presentation. And we designed this thing to be fun. We want your participation, and we look forward to that. We're going to have some breakout rooms. We're going to be wanting your participation there, and we're going to do a debrief of the breakout rooms, and we absolutely have some time for Q&A. We know there are going to be a lot of questions and stuff, and we will do our best to address you all questions and make sure everyone feel heard. Let me go over some housekeeping rules real quick. The first thing is we want you all to use the chat for questions. Feel free to use the chat for questions. It's even folks that if you're on a call-in, I've never really called in, so I'm not sure how it works, but I think you can use a chat as well. You can send your questions to everyone or to individual panelists through the chat function. Case-specific questions, I know they're going to be coming up. We understand. We want the questions. We appreciate you. We know it's going to generate those questions, but we don't want to spend too much time trying to answer personal case-specific questions. But we do want you paying attention to the materials that's being shared with you all. Stacy is really good with that stuff. Because we want you to use that for the free referrals, and it's going to be listed in the materials. Another real big housekeeping note is we are recording. Folks, I do believe you have the ability to turn your videos on and off. You can change your name if you like, to maintain your privacy. Folks on your laptops, phones as well. And again, I want to reference the materials. We have a bit URL thing right here that will be shared throughout the chat. Also, it will be shared, as a follow-up through, especially when folks is asking and requesting, we'll share it as a follow-up email to everybody. Okay, and let me pass it over to Felicia to introduce two of our very special guests.
Hi, good evening. I want to go ahead and introduce and welcome to share their stories, and grateful to kick us off to share how they have had the Fair Chance Hiring Act and how they knowing their rights means that they're working, and to inspire everybody here in terms of what that looks like. Near and dear, since they're here in the Central Valley as well. So both Tawney Jeffries and Nicole James are open and want to kick us off and inspire others to do the same. Tawney, she's going to go ahead and go first. Tawney, thank you for being here with us. And I just want to ask you, if you could share your story in terms of what it's like looking for a job when you're coming home, and how you prepared for that search, and how the Fair Chance Hiring Act helped you get that job.
Okay, hello everybody. Thanks for inviting me to this. I hope it's helpful to everybody that needs that help. I know it's for myself. It was very intimidating, to have to go out and seek work with this baggage. Before my incarceration, I had a career and knew the resume, how to get a job, the resume, the interview stuff. I was a professional, but after 8 years of incarceration, it really tears down a lot of that. Confidence. And so with that said, I really found my first help while I was still incarcerated. They had what they called a transitions class, and they taught about resumes and applications and how to put things together for job seekers. And the main thing that I got from that class in prison was the incarceration speech, they called it. So basically how to construct a letter or a verbal speech to a potential employer about why you're incarcerated, the verbiage to use in that letter. You don't want to say, yeah, I killed somebody, but, to word it more subtly. And there's just all these guidelines. So that really gave me some hope in, okay, this is how I tackle this. Because I knew I had to get a job when I paroled, but I didn't even know where to begin, how to handle that. So that was my first help. And I started that while I was still in prison. So when I got out and the time came to actually seek employment, I just started applying everywhere. And even though I used to be a radiation therapist, it was a professional medical career, but I can no longer do that. So I had to start from the bottom and apply for a lot of jobs at Target, Walmart, Costco. I mean, not that those are bad jobs, but it's different for me, right? So, and I think I applied for 27, 30 jobs, just Rite Aid, CVS, everything, Dollar Tree. And so I got a response from Walmart. And Felicia, did you want me to tell my whole story right now, or just highlights?
Yeah, and would love, while going through the slides, any advice that you have to share, but how you were ready to go to respond, and you responded, okay. And you got the job, and your words of inspiration, which I know you have some, Tawney.
Okay, so I got an interview with Walmart, and I went for the interview along with, I think there was 4 other girls at the time, and we all got offered the position. And at the end of the interview, it was a group interview, I had talked to the one lady in personnel that she was giving me the paperwork. She was telling me to go home and, if I can, as soon as possible, do the background check and the other paperwork to sign on with them. So as soon as she said background check, I'm like, ugh, I cringed inside, right? So I went home and I did, but before that, I was very forthcoming at that point. And I said, now I just want to be transparent about this. I am on parole. Is that going to hinder my, getting this job? And she looked at me with that shocked, surprised face that people give you when you say that. And she goes, oh, well, I don't know. That's not my decision, So anyway, so I went home, did the background check and everything. And I had everything prepared ahead of time. All the certificates I got in prison from groups that I had attended. I went to a program once I did parole. So I had a lot of certificates from that program as well, the anger management, parenting, you guys, all that stuff, we know. I included all of that, and I had a letter that I had written explaining a little bit about my life prior to my arrest, because it played into why I was in that state of behavior when I got arrested, right? But just short, nothing too detailed, and nothing too scary sounding, right? And then I explained how I worked on myself while in prison to change who that person was at the time of arrest, the work I've done, the 12-step groups I attended, and then I explained what I'm doing today to continue that, positive direction in my life. So with that all submitted, I did get the job at Walmart, and I'm still working there. So I started end of April this year, and I just recently got extended a permanent position there. I'm now cashiering there at Walmart. So I'm excited and happy about that. I think I'm very fortunate because it was like the first batch of jobs I applied for, I actually ended up getting one. So that's not always the case, I know, but I thank God for that he opened that door for me. But I'll tell you that the intimidation I thought about applying for jobs for, I don't know, maybe 3 months before I actually started doing it, because I was so intimidated, so overwhelmed by the prospect of my own guilt and shame about my incarceration, right? My own embarrassment, because that's how it is. And anyways, but what I would say to anybody, and what I had to say to myself, was just do it. Just take that step forward, no matter how it makes me feel, just do it. And be positive about it, and don't beat yourself up about it. Those thoughts and feelings will come in, but just push it away, because we are not our incarceration. We are not our crime. We are human beings that have, for whatever reasons, made a mistake, did things that, got us in that position. I take full responsibility for my incarceration and my crime, but I'm not that woman today, and I do deserve, and we all deserve, a chance to be successful and have a decent life, and for our families to have somebody, back in the family that's not scary or a risk, right? So,
Hi.
yes.
We have a 2-minute time check.
Okay. Yeah. So, but that's really about it. Just go forward. Just do it. Face that fear, that hurdle, and success is just waiting for each of us. It's just a matter of putting in that footwork.
Thank you. Thank you, Tawney, for sharing your
Yes.
story, and then your words of inspiration of just do it.
Okay.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tawney. And feel free throughout the slides, if there's anything that resonates or want to give advice for, please, like you said about the personal statements and how you did that is very much part of what our webinar is going to be about. And then thank you, Tawney. So I want to quickly turn to Nicole. Nicole is here, and she herself has also responded to the notice or the letter, as Tawney said, in terms of sharing her story, and also works for Westcare and has done both as a job coach and as a housing navigator. So I would like to welcome Nicole to this to the stage, I guess, the virtual stage, and ask her to share her story briefly. and to also just give some advice as a job coach too. So she's been in both places. So Nicole, thank you for being with us. Can you unmute yourself or?
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, take it away.
So, as an individual who's been directly impacted by, the justice system, I was released early from prison to a drug treatment furlough. And so I had finished the remainder of my sentence there. And then I had transitioned down from Stockton down to Fresno. And once I had got to Fresno, I began doing like an outpatient treatment program. And I was also job seeking. Well, at the time, like Tawney had mentioned, you're applying for everything. You're applying for Walmart, Target, Dollar Store. And I just kept being rejected. And so with that, I decided to turn to the adult school, maybe try to get a little bit of education under my belt. I went through some computer classes and the office professional class that they had offered. And with that, with the completion of that, they had offered me a internship. Once I completed my internship, they had offered me a substitute position there. And from there, they offered me a permanent position, which was part-time as an instructional aide. Now, when they had offered me this position, the school district had told me they had denied me employment. Well, the director that was overseeing me, he went up to bat for me. He says, you know what, Nicole might have this conviction history, but this is not the person that she is today. So I was able to get a hold of disqualifiers that would disqualify me from being hired on with the school district. And I was able to compare the disqualifiers to what I had on my background. And what I had on my background was nothing that would disqualify. Making sure that I was educating myself on how the companies that would end up disqualifying me for different convictions and letting them know, hey, I appreciate your response, but here's what I have on my conviction, which is not one of the disqualifiers. I ended up getting hired on with the school district prior to having my record cleansed. And I was there for 10 years. Recently, I resigned from the school district and went to work for Turning Point, which is sort of housing for homeless with disabilities. So I had started there, transitioned into job developing, and then also now I'm a housing navigator. But when you first, when you're first released from incarceration, you're very intimidated. My suggestion to you is educate yourself. Educate yourself in the company, know your audience, know whether or not they're, whether or not they follow the second chance hiring, if they're supporters of that, what their disqualifiers are, if they do have disqualifiers, kind of compare what you have on your background, and just to know, what the disqualifiers are, or even, okay, so you get denied employment, knowing what would have hindered you from getting employed. And then just gathering your documentation. So as I was in the drug treatment furlough, like Tawney said, you have all your certificates, make sure you save those, obtain copies of letters from your counselors, your support staff, anybody who's willing to write you and write about your journey and who now that you're not that person, or the steps that you've made to change from your past. As I was going to school, allowing the staff to write me letters, directors, anybody who you can get as a support system, and all the way from, either incarceration, attaining those documents throughout your whole journey. I still to this day have already gotten my certificate of rehabilitation, and I still attain those documents because they're just important to have.
Thank you, Nicole. And thank you so much for sharing your story and being here both to share your story and to give your professional advice, right? So kind of what both Tawney and Nicole said, we're here to learn and educate ourselves and be ready to fight for our rights and just do it, right? So thank you. And throughout it, please, Tawney and Nicole, feel free to jump in. A lot of the stuff that you're talking about is what we're going to go through about letters of support, getting ready for when that time comes. So I'm going to kick it over to Katie.
Thank you again so much for helping us with this by sharing your stories and just bringing that, extra touch to this. We really appreciate it, Tawney and Nicole, and thank you as well. So today what we are doing is doing a deep dive into, the California Fair Chance Act, commonly known as ban the box laws. And one thing that just to mention is that, these laws and policies is definitely a product of organizing that really is, it was born out of the work of All of Us or None, which is a grassroots membership led based, formerly incarcerated member-led based organization that is really all about formerly incarcerated people standing up for their rights, speaking up for what it is that we feel like we need to rebuild our life and put the pieces back together. And with that, we are going to get started.
Great. So I'm going to start off with telling us a little bit about what the law says. So the California Fair Chance Act became effective in 2018. And the law has 3 different parts that we're going to cover in detail over the next 10 slides or so. But those 3 parts are first, the ban the box part, what we're calling that, which says that employers can't ask about someone's criminal history before they give them a job offer. The second is the interactive process piece, which says that if an employer is going to revoke a job offer, they have to follow certain steps. They have to follow a certain process to do that. And that process involves notice and an opportunity to respond, like we heard Tawney and Nicole did or in their introduction. And then the third piece is that there's off-limits information, that there's certain criminal history information that can't be considered by employers when making decisions about your employment. And in the next 10 slides or so, like I said, we're going to go over these in detail, but I just want to say up front that you all don't need to memorize all the details, right? You're going to have the resources. You have the fair hiring materials in the Google Doc that we've been sharing and the Google folder that we've been sharing. But as long as you remember that there are 3 parts to the law and what those parts are, the ban the box part, the process part, and the off-limits information piece, then that'll be a really great start. And then okay, and then I can go to my folder here, which has all these resources. Okay. So we also want to let you know that there are some employers or positions that aren't covered by ban the box. There's exemptions to it. And it's a little bit complicated, but I'm going to try to break it down for you all. So the most important part is that the law covers most public and private employers with 5 or more employees. So that's the thing that you really want to remember. Most public employees, most private employers with 5 or more employees, they're covered. There are some positions or some employers who are not covered by the first piece of the law, and it's clear that these employers listed here that I'm going to go over in a little bit are allowed to ask you up front about your record. So the ban the box piece of the law, right? And so those are positions for which a state or local agency is required by law to conduct a criminal background check. Positions with the criminal justice agency, like a police department or a DA's office. Positions as a farm labor contractor, or positions where the law restricts employment based on criminal history or requires a criminal background check. And some examples of those, although this list is not by any means totally accurate because it might depend on which position you're applying for, but we just wanted to give you all an idea of where those types of laws exist and where you might need to do some more research to figure out if the employer is exempt, are places like schools, healthcare, the financial sector, positions where you're working with children, elders, or persons with disabilities, and positions that require you to carry firearms. But remember, I really want to highlight that there's exceptions to the exceptions, right? Like we heard from Nicole, she worked at a school, right? And they followed this process. And so it might depend, for instance, whether you're applying to be a teacher at a school or whether you're applying to be a janitor at the school. And there are also a lot of schools that have, even though they may not be required to follow ban the box, that they've taken it on as policies. So the community college system in California, the UC system, they all follow the ban the box. So that's the first part of the law. The second and third part of the law, the process and the off-limits information piece, again, is a little bit complicated. Our reading of the law is that these apply to all employers with 5 or more employees, or that there are narrower exceptions, but this hasn't been tested yet in the courts. So what you can do if you're trying to figure out, I'm applying to this job and I don't know if the law applies to them or not, or what parts of the law apply, you can always reach out to us. You can call us at Legal Aid at Work. You can call Root and Rebound or the other organizations in the list of legal aid organizations that's in the Google folder, and we can try to help you figure out whether or not it applies. Okay, so now we're going to go piece by piece, starting with the ban the box part. And the ban the box part applies at the application and the interview stage. So most employers in California right now are not allowed to either ask about your conviction history on a job application or at an interview, or run a background check before they actually offer you a job. And so these questions that we see here, which I know you all are still seeing on job applications because we're still seeing them on job applications, are illegal for most employers. Have you ever been convicted of a criminal offense? Check the box, yes or no. And that's what we talk about, right? When we're talking about banning the box, it's that check this yes or no. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? Have you ever been convicted of a felony? Have you ever been arrested? These types of questions at the front end for most employers are now illegal. And we have a little pop quiz here, and it's a surprise, which is why it's a pop quiz. So I'm going to ask Mark to pull up our first poll. And I'll read the question, I'll read the answers, and then you'll be able to answer A, B, C, or D. So the question is, when can a potential employer ask about a criminal record? Is it A, before giving someone an application, B, on the application, C, during the interview, or D, after offering someone a job? And is our poll, oh, there it is. Okay, so our poll just came up, so you can click A, B, C, or D. All right, we have about 50 people have answered. Give you guys a few more seconds. Okay, let's go ahead and end the poll. Okay, so we see our results. About 93% of you all said D, which is the correct answer, right? So that's because we banned the box. So we banned any questions related to your criminal history until the employer decides, I think they're qualified and I want to hire them. Only then can they actually get access to your criminal history information. So they can't ask during the interview, they can't ask on the application, and they can't ask before giving someone an application. Okay, so moving right along to the interactive process piece. So this is after the employer decides Stacy's qualified, I want to hire her. Then they can ask about your criminal record, but there's a specific process that they have to follow. And the first step of that process is an individual evaluation. So the company has to look at you as an individual, right? Like I think Tawney or Nicole said, right? You're more than just your criminal record. They have to look at you as an individual, and they have to look at all of you. But two things they specifically have to look at is, one, whether your specific convictions are directly related to your job duties, and two, how much time has passed since the convictions. Okay, so Katie likes to use the example, for instance, if you were robbing banks 6 months ago and you apply to work as a bank teller, you're gonna have a pretty hard time convincing the employer that they shouldn't hire you because there's a relationship between your job duties and your convictions and how long ago they were. But if you were robbing banks 6 months ago and you're applying to work as an engineer, or you're applying to work as a social worker or as a janitor, right, then maybe that shouldn't prevent you from actually doing that job. Or if you were robbing banks 16 years ago and you haven't done anything like that since then, right, then maybe that shouldn't prevent you from doing the job. But if the employer does decide that they want to take back your job offer, then they have to go to the next step, which is the initial written notification. And in that notification, it has to be in writing, right? And they have to let you know, we're considering taking back your job offer, and they have to tell you specifically which convictions they have a problem with. So they can't just say, Stacy, we got your background check and it's really long, it's a mess, like we're not gonna hire you. They have to say, Stacy, your 2014 conviction for burglary and your 2017 conviction for shoplifting is the issue. And with that, they also have to give you a copy of the background check or wherever they're getting your criminal history information. And then the next step is probably the most important step, because this is where you come in. This is where you have the ability to respond and actually change the employer's mind, right? Just like Tawney shared with us that she did. So you have to be given at least 5 business days, which is a short amount of time, but 5 business days to respond. And your response can include evidence of background check errors, rehabilitation, or circumstances of the crime or your current life. And in the next part of the presentation, Felicia is going to cover that in detail, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it here. And then if you do submit a response, then the employer has to do a reevaluation. So they have to consider whatever you submitted and reevaluate whether your convictions still justify not hiring you. If you didn't submit anything, right, there's nothing for them to reevaluate and you're probably not going to get the job. But if you submit something, then they have to do a reevaluation. And if they still decide they're not going to hire you, they have to give you a final written notification where they let you know about that. And they let you know that you have the right to go file a complaint with the government about their decision not to give you your job. Okay, so here we wanted to share with you all an example of what these are supposed to look like. You might not actually get one that looks like this, right? Because the company might be violating your law. Violating your rights, I'm sorry. And a lot of times I've had employers who just ghost my clients, right? They get the background check results and then they stop replying to my clients' phone calls, texts, emails. So this is what you're supposed to get, but you might not actually get it, right? And so you see here, the employer who followed the law told the person you have 5 business days from the receipt of this letter to contact us. You can let us know these are the different things that you can submit. And this information will be reviewed by the company before making a final decision regarding your conditional offer, which is something that's often, that job offer is often called a conditional offer or a job offer contingent on X, Y, and Z, subject to X, Y, and Z. Those are the kinds of phrases that you'll see in offer letters. Okay, so moving rapidly along, our third part of the law is the off-limits information piece. And this applies before and after the job offer. And this is types of information that most employers can't ask for or use at all at any point during the job process to make a decision about your employment. And so those categories of information are arrests that did not result in convictions unless the case is currently open. So if you are out on bail for something and it's still, the case is still making its way through the criminal system, they can ask about that and use that. But if you were arrested and never charged with something, or if you were arrested and the charges were dropped, then that's information that they can't use. If you participated in a pretrial or post-trial diversion program, which oftentimes comes up in DUIs or with drug-related offenses, then they can't use that information. And then the next bullet point is related to clean slate or record clearing processes. If you've gone to the court and asked for your convictions to be dismissed, or it's sometimes called expunged, or if you've gotten a certificate of rehabilitation, like I think Tawney also shared that she did, then that's now a conviction that can't be used by the employer to make a decision about your employment. So that's a really good reason to participate in some of these record clearing processes. If you've gotten your conviction judicially sealed, that also can't be used. Or if you've gotten a pardon from the governor or from the president, that's also conviction history information that can no longer be used. If your offense happened while you were under the jurisdiction of the juvenile court, then that can't be used. And then the last one is minor marijuana related convictions that are more than 2 years old. So we have another pop quiz where I'm going to ask Mark to pull up the poll again. Can an employer run a background check on me? So you can select either yes or no, and the poll should be up. There we go. Okay. And it looks like over half of you have now participated. So we're going to go ahead and end the poll. Great. So the answer is yes, but there is a little bit of a trick to this one, only after a job offer, right? Remember that ban the box piece. They can only run a background check on you after the job offer. So it's not an absolute yes. The when is really important. Okay, so we're going to ask some more poll questions here. Can an employer ask me about past arrests? So what do you all think? Yes or no? Okay, so here we have a little bit more mixed, but let's see, I'll give you all a few more seconds. Okay, let's go ahead and end the poll. So we have 39% saying yes and 61% saying no, which is great because it's a trick question. So the answer is no, but unless the case is currently open, so they can ask about arrests that are currently open, right? And it also has to be after the job offer. So it's good that you all were sort of split. I think some of the people who are answering yes were maybe thinking about those exceptions to the general rule that past arrests can't be asked about. Okay, one more poll. Can an employer ask me about dismissed convictions? So what do you all think? Yes or no? Okay, go ahead and end the poll. And so we have 89% saying no and 11% saying yes. And the answer is actually no. Right, so that's a really good reason, again, to participate in those clean slate programs and get your convictions dismissed or expunged, because then employers can't use that in making decisions about your employment. And here just is a one-page summary of everything that we've talked about on the last 10 slides. And this is in the materials folder. So you can, if you want a reference to look back to, you can just look at this one-page summary of it. And with that, I'll pass it over to Felicia.
So I'm going to talk about kind of summing up some of the conversations that Tawney and Nicole started us and how to prepare for this interactive process, how to get ready for this very short time period from when after there's been a job offer and then the employer ran the background check. If they choose to run a background check, then they gave you saying, hey, we're thinking of this conviction on robbery and conviction on shoplifting being a problem. Give us your response, okay? We're gonna talk about how to navigate that because it's a very short time period. So our main advice is to get ready now for that short time period. Get ready now. As Tawney shared, she started getting ready while she was getting ready to come home, right? It's never too early to start getting ready for that process. So we're going to talk about drafting a personal statement or, your response, as both Nicole and Tawney shared, getting letters of support, who to think about asking, who to think about being that support system to respond, and potentially criminal court documents to have ready to go. So the first thing somebody wants to do when you're thinking about looking for work, thinking about moving up in work, is very much knowing what your record is, right? So we advise everybody to have a copy of what was called a rap sheet, your record of arrests and prosecutions. You can get a copy of your records. You have the right to a copy of your records. A rap sheet is different than a commercial background check, and we'll talk about the difference. But a rap sheet has your full history of any and all arrests and the history of that arrest. If it turned into a warrant, if it turned into a court case, if it turned into a dismissal, if it turned into a conviction. This is all good information for you to have, because then also if the rap sheet is wrong, you have the right to correct it. So the difference between a rap sheet, which is the government, it's a lot more confidential than a background check. There's very limited people that can have it, but you are one of them. You have the right to know what's on your record. It's based on official government records. It contains your entire criminal history, and it's generally very confidential. This is different than the background checks that we're learning about today and what your general employer has, which is based on an investigation by a private company. It contains those limited criminal history information, so it won't include dismissed convictions, as we learned about. It won't include arrests that didn't go right, that aren't pending cases. And it can be seen by a lot more people than your rap sheet, right? It can be seen by public-private landlords, by employers, as we learned, and as banks. So there's a big difference between a rap sheet and a background sheet and a background check, where we very much advise everybody to start by getting your rap sheet and knowing what is on that record. And once you get your rap sheet, and another way to, if you have something in front of you to say like, oh, is this a rap sheet or is this a commercial background check? A rap sheet is generally very confusing, right? So contact us, contact anybody on the materials that Stacy has included in our list of materials, and we can help you work through that rap sheet. But as you can see here, as we talked about, it will include from the initial arrest to the history of where that went. So that includes the arrest, that includes if there was a warrant, that includes what all the original charges were. And let's say there were 5 charges, but you only pled to 1, then that 1 is going to show the conviction, but it'll show the whole history from that arrest to the end. You'll also, it's good to know background checks too. And as the employer, if it is that they're having an issue with your background check, they have to give you a copy of that. The consumer rights requires that. You look for errors. Once you get your background checks, you also have the right not only to respond, but if there's any errors on your background checks. And this is commonly sometimes done. So for example, they may have a conviction that is no longer within the 7-year time period, or it's written down as a different, as a felony, but it was really a misdemeanor, right? So there's commonly errors on there that you have the right to correct, and we can help you with that process as well. The other advice, as we've talked about, is dismiss what can be dismissed. Okay, so this slide talks about the word dismissal and expungements are used interchangeably, but it really is just a dismissal. And generally, your case may be eligible for a dismissal if you only had to pay a fine, or if you only had to serve probation, or if you even served a county jail, right? Your conviction may be eligible for dismissal. So another way to think about that is if you did not serve any time in prison for that case, if you're no longer on any court supervision, so you're no longer on probation, you're no longer on parole for any other charge, so you're off court supervision, and you're not currently facing any case, right? So you're not currently charged or serving a sentence or under any term of supervision, you may be eligible for an expungement or a dismissal. There are certain convictions that are never eligible for an expungement, so some sex offenses. And also, if one of the things that's holding you back is that you're still on probation, you may be eligible for an early release of probation, right? Let's say you're doing really well, you've done everything, and you've served half of your probation. Go get off probation early, and then you also get a mandatory dismissal. This is a very general slide, but very much want to start with what can be dismissed. Let's go dismiss it. And then there's other ways that we can talk about your specific convictions and work with you with record cleaning, either with your respective county or if there's a clean slate program. This is a great first start in terms of getting ready. If you get it dismissed, then it's not even going to come up on your general background checks. What you're going to do in responding to that pre-adverse notice or that letter in terms of them taking back your, saying they're going to take back your conditional offer is having that rehabilitation evidence ready to go, right? So as we learned today, that is any and all things. That's showing that you're a different person now than when you were on that conviction. Did you get a GED? Did you get AAs, BAs, went to college? Do we have certifications? Do we have transcripts to show that you actually not only went to college, but you graduated with the 4.0, right? Letters of recommendations from those who supported you. And one great thing about, being connected with people is you'll have those letters of recommendations, right? You'll be able to hear from social workers, from community leaders, from people who are in groups and seeing you advocating, right? All of this are people that can do letters of recommendations for you and letters of support showing who they're seeing, how you're showing up now. Proof of completion of rehabilitation programs. This is especially important if your conviction history and the ones that they may have issues with had to do with substance use disorders. So if you have rehab programs when it comes to that, when you have classes about anger management, as Tawney shared, volunteer service, participation in churches, mosques, any way that you're showing up and you have people saying that I've seen this person and this is going to be a great employee because of, what I've seen. So these are all ideas. And a great thing is just reaching out to the people that you know and seeing what they have used, or also asking them as job seekers, what do you use when you're interviewing people? What do you like to see, right? So just that networking helps people come up with ideas in different ways that they can have a stronger rehabilitation package. Here are some great examples of things that have been in these rehabilitation packages. These rehabilitation packages that are so relevant right now for the Fair Chance Hiring Act, but it's also relevant if you're thinking about record cleaning, if you're thinking about occupational licensing. It is relevant in a lot of different ways in terms of reentry. So these are just, graphic examples of what we went through. And personal statements. So Tawney and Nicole kind of shared in terms of telling their story, being ready to go, that it's very difficult, right? So it might take time, and that's why it's very important to start now, because it's a very short process from when they give you that letter saying that, to respond and give your side of the story and change their mind. It's very hard to draft that with that added stress of knowing that so much is writing on it. So if we start now, these are ideas to put on that personal statement. You want to start with just discussing the conviction, right? Discussing what happened, just some basic facts. Very much they want to see taking responsibility for what happened. And when it says here mitigating factors, like what was going on at that time? Like, were you young? Were you going through heavy financial stress at the time? Were you, you in your substance use disorder? Whatever it was, what other ideas or life circumstances that were there at that time that aren't there now, that, bring that out, and how that made you change. Then you'll want to discuss some of the accomplishments, the rehabilitation stuff that not only are you going to talk about in your personal statement, but you're also going to have that paperwork, the transcripts, the certificates. You're going to talk about it. And you're going to talk about how you're different now, how you've gone through those classes, how you've gone to that schooling, how you have a track history when it comes to work. And all of this makes you a strong employee for them. And you can talk about also the relatable skills and qualities that you have that make you a great person to be a social worker, or a great person for that customer service job, or that strong work ethic when it comes to the warehouse work. All of this is stuff that you can go through your personal statement, and here's a way to guide that. And it'll also be in your toolkit. There'll be examples there on how to guide it. And you can always talk to any one of us. So here are some sample letters from real clients that have been used before. So from the time I was 18 years old until 25, I struggled with drug addiction. I was convicted several times for the drug-related offenses. They regret their period of their past and take full responsibility. They've been in treatment for 18 months. They completed the program. They moved forward on with their life, got their high school diploma, volunteer, and mentors young people with substance use disorders. So this is an example of somebody, again, a real client and who got the job. There'll be other examples too in the toolkit. Tawney and Nicole, I don't know if there's anything that you want to jump in terms of drafting that personal statement, which I know is one of the hardest things. I know Tawney's advice was just do it, right? Anything to add or no? Oh, sorry, I think you're muted, Tawney.
In drafting my letter, like I think I mentioned, and like you had mentioned also, just brief statements about where my life was at the time of my arrest, what was going on. Personally, I did have some traumatic, I had postpartum depression at the time, was seeing a doctor for that. I had just lost my brother. I was at his funeral 2 weeks prior to my arrest. So there was a lot of things going on that put me in a state other than my normal state, right? And so I included that, and at first I thought, well, geez, do they want to hear about that stuff? Am I whining? Am I making excuses? But, that was the reality of the circumstance, And so, but I just briefly put that just kind of matter of factly. I didn't go drone on and on about it. And so I think that is important, and it can be hard because you have to relive that moment, right? But it's also cathartic, and cleansing to just go through that and say, yes, this is the situation. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tawney, for sharing. It is hard. So there will be sample letters in the toolkit, and there's also sample letters so that you can share with those who may be able to draft support letters. A lot of times, as I think of like letters of support, letters of reference, you always want to make it as easy as possible for them, right? Because they're being asked by other people, just in general, like, hey, can you write a letter of recommendation for me? Can you write a letter of support for all these different ways? They're getting it from their own staff. They're trying to try different other jobs. So make it as simple as possible for them by giving them sample letters, right? And here are some sample letters in the toolkit. We have sample letters for probation officers, from job training coaches, from you might think about the healthcare providers if one of the problems may have been your substance use disorder, or if you're going through, as Tawney shared, postpartum depression. Those are other ideas of how you can get those support ready to go for that very short time period. And so I'll kick that off to Katie.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. I hope you guys were paying attention to that great information. So real quick, I just want to talk about some of the common violations that, unfortunately, yes, we are still seeing. The law is not a panacea. It's not a cure-all. And so, definitely there are some of these common violations that really, they just all over the place. They running rampant. Asking about convictions on job applications. Unfortunately, yes, a lot of employers still have not updated their applications to bring themselves in alignment with the current laws and policies. Conducting a background check before a conditional offer of employment is made. It's important when you get the copy of that background check to look at the time that background check was generated on, that'll let you know. Stating that no individuals with convictions will be hired. That's a blanket ban. We call those blanket bans. And for the most part, that's likely illegal, considering off limits information like convictions that have been dismissed, wrong process or no process at all for telling applicants that the employer is taking the offer back. That's personally what happened to me in my experience. I never heard from the employer again once they got access to the flawed background report. Employer does not provide a copy of the background check. A lot of employers forget that piece, that it's there, when they try to revoke that offer, they don't, attach that extra copy. Employer gives the applicant less than 5 business days to review and respond to the notice. So you will get that pre-adverse action letter Monday, and then Wednesday, you're getting a final notice saying that you didn't get the job. That's violation of the law. And so this slide really quick, I just want to talk a bit about documenting some of these potential violations. This stuff is important when it comes to exercising the law, and this things has been built into the law. You know, you want to do what you got to do. You want to copy, scan, or screenshot. You know, you want to do whatever you can, take photos. We recommend documenting all communications, especially the job offering, the pre-adverse action letters, other communications related to your criminal record, the final hiring decision. Definitely take notes of the communication. You know, when did an employer ask about your criminal record? Was it during an interview? You know, you want to make note of this stuff as soon as possible while the information is still fresh. Saving those emails and letters. We talked about that. Take notes of telephone calls, the date and time of the call, who you spoke with. You know, a lot of times you can't forget, was it Becky or was it Karen that called me from HR? It was one of the two. You know, you want to remember who you spoke with, and what they spoke about. You know, how did they relay the information? You want to try to take note of that stuff. It'd be Karen most of the time. And another piece that I really just want to mention, standing up for your rights. You know, a lot of times that's really how we get beat out of some of the great laws that are on the books to protect us. We don't exercise them because we don't stand up for the rights. And that could be a myriad of things, you know. Maybe I'm in a state of survival. I don't have time to do it right now. It could be that I didn't know how to exercise the law. Sometimes they do that on purpose. They make it hard for you. So you want to prepare. We talked about that earlier. That's how you really stand up for yourself, by preparing, taking advantage of those clean slate programs, getting your records, draft letters. We talked about that great stuff. Documenting what's happening. We just talked about that fantastic option. Responding to the employer. We've been talking about that. You want to respond to that pre-adverse action notice. You know, so a lot of times we don't know what it looks like. So you want to be on the lookout for these notices, especially when you know that you're at the beginning stages of applying for several different jobs. You know, standing up for your rights also includes filing a complaint with the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, or whatever your local agency is. The DFEH is the state agency that is tasked with taking, fielding, investigating, and responding to these complaints. And now you have 3 years to process a complaint. You know, a lot of times you get denied the job, you just need to hurry up and find yourself another one. You ain't got time for that. Now you have 3 years, okay? And turn to your community, okay? All of us are none. There is plenty of support in the materials that's being shared around with avenues and options and opportunities to turn to your community. You involved in whatever, the clean slate program, you going through some type of job training program, that's all considered community. It's a lot of people on this call. You guys are considered community. Help folks when they come to you. You know, if you're a service provider frustrated about being denied several jobs, help steer people in the right direction. It's empowering. Okay, so thank you guys again for sitting through not sitting through, because this has been fun and engaging and fantastic. So thank you guys for being involved and participating with the polls and everything like that, the pop quizzes. And so we have come to our first role play. Okay, and I'm going to tell you guys, we got 2 different role plays. And so what we're going to do is, remember I told you guys about the breakout rooms. So this is where we're going to get gathered into the breakout rooms. There's going to be about 6 or 7 different breakout rooms. Each breakout room, though, is going to have a different, not each one, but they're going to be 2 different prompts for the breakout rooms. You'll either be role play 1 or role play 2. Okay. Role play 1 is going to be about responding to, if you're asked at the job interview, an illegal question at the job interview, how do you respond in real time? That's what role play 1 is about. Role play 2 is going to be about the interactive process Stacy walked us through. When you get that preliminary notice in your email, how do you respond in writing? So you're going to be assigned to a breakout room, and it's going to be 1 or 2 of those role plays, and you'll meet our other special guests that's going to help lead these breakout rooms. Ivana, Jennifer, Deborah, thank you guys so much. And it's time for the breakout rooms too. So Mark, you can go ahead and get those started whenever. We are back at the main session. It looks like we definitely got just about everybody. So we had 2 different role play going on. We had one was about if you're asked that illegal question at your interview, how do you respond? Role play 2 was about the responding in writing to the adverse action letter. And so we're going to go ahead and do report backs. I know we're behind time, so whoever's doing time. Oh, yeah. I'm picking up on the chat what Rita suggested. What about my other panelists? We're comfortable with that?
I don't think we can see it, Katie, so you should just go ahead.
I'm suggesting, should we skip the debriefs because of the time? Or what do you think, Stacy?
Yeah, we're kind of short on time.
Okay, let's go ahead and just review then. So here, Katie, do you want to just review the materials?
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. Thank you everybody for being flexible and fluid with us. We're just going to keep it rolling here. I'm pretty sure we learned a lot in our little breakout rooms. Okay, so again, if an employer asks about your criminal application on your criminal record on the application, my honest advice is right here. Be truthful, but know your rights. I also advise consider how bad you want that job. Okay. Again, same thing here. And again, this stuff is in the toolkit. All this information in the toolkit. Read the question carefully. Encourage your clients, whoever you're working with, to read the question carefully. Consider what they're asking you. Think about your conviction history, again, ahead of time while you're doing your job searching. Always remember, you have options. You sometimes you can leave it blank. Sometimes you can't. Don't ever be afraid to take legal action. All of us know we built that into the law. We want you filing that follow-up piece and applying with the DEFH, okay? We want folks following up and putting in those complaints. And again, practice, okay? Always practice when it comes to your responses in real time. Think creatively about your response, okay? Here's a quick template of how to formulate a personal statement. Is this? Yeah. These are still me. Here's a quick template that, this is how you want to formulate a personal statement. You want to start it off by discussing your conviction. When by keeping it short, though, take responsibility, talk about mitigating factors, talk about what it taught you, okay? Discuss accomplishments. I want to spend a bulk of my personal statement talking about my accomplishments, community and social ties, programs completed inside. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the ones I completed while out. I'm going to spend a lot of time on my employment history and my educational attainments. And I'm going to always close my personal statement with close, relatable skills and estate qualities. You guys heard our 2 guest speakers talk about this stuff in the beginning, okay? And I'm going to pass this. Is this me or is this, I'll pass this on to Stacy.
So I just wanted to show you all what the DFEH complaint looks like. And it just, the full DFEH intake is in the materials folder, so you'll be able to see all 11 pages of it, but only about 3 or 4 pages are required. And you can see the main part of it just asks you to check a box, with what violation you're alleging the employer committed, how they violated your rights. So it can be pretty streamlined and pretty easy to actually file a complaint with them. And then here's some potential benefits. There's the sort of intangible benefits of standing up for your rights, holding an employer accountable, making sure they respect your rights, getting an explanation. And then there's also the tangible benefits, right? You could actually get the job itself or get the job back. You could get back pay or other monetary compensation. You could change the practice at the company so it doesn't happen to anyone that comes after you. And you could get training at the company for the people in HR or the people who handle background checks so that it doesn't happen again to anyone else. And then the next part of the presentation, which I'm just going to zoom by, is some resources that we wanted to highlight for you. These are all in the materials folder, but we wanted to highlight record clearing resources. You can go to your local public defender's office. You can go to Root and Rebound, call Felicia, or you can go to clearmyrecord.org. And there's also a training related to this that you can watch in the materials folder. Legal Aid at Work has workers' rights clinics all across the state where folks can get free employment-related legal advice. We don't do expungements, we don't do record clearing, but we do employment related work. You can call the number there. There's some more resources, contact information for the agency, the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, where you can go file a complaint. The Inland Empire Fair Chance Coalition, Root and Rebound, and Legal Aid at Work's contact information and website. Information to join All of Us or None and the Coalition for Family Unity. And then here's what the materials look like on the page. I'm going to highlight the Fair Chance Toolkit, which is that blue that we've been referencing, and also the California Employers Fair Chance Hiring Toolkit, which is a Root and Rebound resource for employers. And it talks about not only the law, but also other incentives, like you can get a tax break, for instance, for hiring people with who are formerly incarcerated, and other best practices. So you can share this with your employer as part of the fair chance process, the interactive process, or for the people on here who are working for nonprofits or who are advocates, either lawyers or non-lawyers. Remember too that you're an employer. So remember that you can share this with your management, with your HR, so that your organization can become a good employer for people with records. And with that, we'll go ahead and have a few minutes left for questions. You can also, here's our contact information for everyone, so feel free to reach out to us if we don't get to your question.
I'll go ahead and drop some Q&As, and I'll respond to some that I saw going through the chats. And one of the questions was about record clearing, and to let you know, please contact us, call your local public defender's office, or contact Root and Rebound. I gave very general information in terms of what may be eligible for dismissal, but there are some exceptions to that. So for example, there may be an exception in terms of serving prison, but it's very limited when it comes like AB 109. But all of that for your specific cases, please contact us and we could go through your rap sheet and give you that specific information. I also saw a question when it came to occupational licensing. There's new laws that change. So AB 2138 for a lot of boards, which means that if stuff has been dismissed, or if it's been more than 7 years, there's some boards that may be prohibited from asking, very similar to MIRA, the Fair Chance Hiring Act, but it does not apply to every board. So another one of those for your specific case, please contact us. We're going to go ahead and drop our information again in the chat for free legal consultation and advice. If there's any other questions, I don't know if anybody saw others to flag. Oh.
I would just also add that there's a whole separate training related to occupational licensing that Felicia was a part of in the folder. So there's a Google Doc that says other trainings or webinars that you might be interested. So there's an occupational licensing webinar in there, and then there's a webinar related to clean slate issues. So if you have another hour or two, you can go ahead and watch those and get sort of all the 101, all the basic know your rights information about those as well. So there's a lot of resources in that folder so I really recommend that you spend some time, clicking through those things because there's basically, I'm sure all the questions that you might have for us are answered in that folder, but you can also always reach out to us and we can direct you to the right resource or answer your question. I see a question about, are there any educational resources in community college? So California actually recently banned the box related to education, so that educational institutions can't ask about conviction history up front again. And there's also a specific FAQ about community colleges for student workers in the additional resources page of the folder. So you'll see, I'm sharing my screen, this additional resources folder at the top. There's a Q&A related to community college students and the policy, the ban the box policy that community colleges in California have. There are also resources in Spanish and the Espanol subfolder in there as well. And we'll share the link again in the chat. Give me a second.
All righty, so that is it, folks. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I was responding to the chat. I seen Henry was giving me a little shout out in the chat. How you doing, my man? I'm glad you was able to make it on here and soak up some of this information and take it back to the community. So yes, that's it. Any last minute questions? Folks, it's 6:31. You guys are not free to go yet. Haha, no, I'm just playing.
Yeah, feel free to stick around if you have other questions, and we can also unmute you and you can ask your question out loud.
Thank you all. We appreciate it. We appreciate doing these presentations. You know, we want to do these, so don't think you are holding us up. We appreciate it. Folks taking their time out, you know, it's after 5, probably trying to get some dinner or whatever. People got kids, probably driving, trying to get a good park. You know, if you pull up after 6, you know, their parking spaces be gone for real. So we just really appreciate you guys for spending some time and engaging with us this evening. Thank you so much to Ivana and Deborah again, and Molly and Jen for helping us with the moderate the breakout rooms. Thank you so much to our special guest speakers, Tawney and Nicole, for sharing their stories. I know how it is. Sometimes sharing a little personal story, all these strangers and stuff, sometimes I get a little wore out. So thank you for, you know, gracing us with your stories. And what's that right there? Look, it look like some questions in the chat. Gotta stay on top of it. Them sometimes them probation relationships don't be all that they, you know, be surfacing to be. You gotta stay on top of it to make sure that they providing people with, you know, valuable opportunities and not just those, you know, paycheck to paycheck level jobs. So sometimes you definitely gotta monitor the relationships within probation and them employment outcomes, because yeah. Thank y'all so much.
I won't forget about you, Cass. I got your email.
Yes.
Dale says he has a question on record clearing expungement.
Who was that?
What's the question?
How long after you get your record expunged will it no longer show up on your background check? So for the background check, the commercial background checks, it's supposed to be automatic. The court is the one that gives that information out, but it's on contingent on us and y'all to get on top of it and make sure that that's happening. So we mostly do is what we tell people after they get a dismissal, wait about a month or so and then ask for another rap sheet to make sure it shows that it's been dismissed, right? To basically check to make sure that all that is consistent. And if it says dismissed on the rap sheet, then that means that it shouldn't show up on the commercial background check because it's getting out to the agencies that it's been dismissed. So
I know for me, my paperwork went through like October 3rd, 2017. And then I had Tesla ran a background check on me in like February 2018. And that came back clear. But also at the same time, Checker ran a background check on me. And yeah, so they did find my information and they did find those charges and it did show up dismissed really small at the end. So that's another confusion out there. Yes, the information does still show up on these third-party commercial background checks. It just says really small in parentheses at the end, dismissed pursuant to California Penal Code 12.304, whatever it is that it was dismissed pursuant to. So I've had several different experiences depending upon who's running the background check. I think that's the next problem that we got to be paying attention to.
I know for myself, when I was offered a conditional hiring and they had given me my my paperwork stating what was on my background, there was clerical errors on there. And my background, I went through my record cleansing 2 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a, you know, and that's a question that I still want answered. what's the proper way that the company should be reporting this information? Because how come one background check company came back and said no records found, but the other background check company came back showing everything that under the sun with that little bit of piece written in the end? So,
what I do want to, so the Root and Rebound, I don't know if everyone's familiar with or what's called a roadmap to reentry. It's very overwhelming. It's like 1,000 pages, but it's, I know they're crazy, right? But there is a section where you could put in like background checks, and you could go specifically to also examples that you could draft template letters that you can send the background check to clean it up. Because unfortunately, as what both Katie and Nicole are talking about, is background checks, they're all different, right? So it's possible that one is clean and the other one's not. And in that 5-day letter response, not just one of the is, if there's anything on here that needs to be fixed, let us know, right? So you would be responding to that and letting them know they need to fix that. So that's also a way to respond to that.
So I see a question here. If by law, the interviewer cannot ask about your past convictions or your criminal history, why do we have to answer that question?
Is that oh, go ahead, Stacy.
You don't have to answer it.
No.
Yeah, but you don't have to. So you can say, right, one of the examples that we saw in the toolkit is there's a law called the Fair Chance Act that prohibits you from asking that question. Right. But if you decide that's not an answer that I feel comfortable with, or I think that answer is going to put off the employer, or I think that's going to, be a red flag for them, then there are other ways you can answer it too. And some of those samples are in, I think, pages like 18 through 20 of the Fair Chance Toolkit, the blue one, of what you can say. But you sort of have to decide for yourself, like, what's my right answer? Because there's not one right answer. That is a potential good answer, but you have to decide and weigh, for, like Katie was saying, weigh the opportunities for yourself and the risks.
Andrea had a question, but I don't see how I can unmute you. And Dale Olson says, I have a follow-up question, but you'll need to type it.
Also, feel free to contact us. Like we said, we can't give any specific, if there's anything specific about you, I don't know what questions are going to come up, but we give free legal advice, and all the other people that we're referring you to, so the other legal aids, is also free legal advice, right? So feel free to contact. Knowledge is power. So, and we're here to serve. So very much about calling us so we could talk about your specific questions and issues. That's always an option. And you could call more than once, not just ask for your rap sheet more than once. It could also get more than one time legal advice, right? So.
I don't see other questions coming in. So, here's Andrea's.
Sorry, I just saw that someone sent me an unmute also.
Go ahead. Well, I'll read your question. My situation.
I think, Rita, what we can do is we can follow up with Andrea, or she can, I think it's like a very specific question.
Okay.
Yeah, so in general, please contact us, and we can go through your specific question. Also, another thing that we can also go through, like if you're applying to different kinds of places, if it is that you're applying to occupational licensing, we heard of, for example, that has different rules and different laws, I guess is another way of saying it, than the Fair Chance Hiring Act, right? So feel free to contact us every time you have a questions. Any time that you're applying for a different job, or you're applying to to school, or you're having issues because of your criminal conviction, that's why we're here. And then Andrea will follow up with you for your specific question. Right? Is anything?
Right.
Awesome.
And our contact information is in the PowerPoint, remember, and you can also contact Root and Rebound's general number, which is also in the PowerPoint and is also in the list of legal aid organizations in the folder, as is Legal Aid at Works.
Good night, everybody.
All right. See y'all later. Yes, we'll be doing more presentations. Somebody had asked that. Keep in contact with us. You want to get some scheduled for you and your clients. We're going to go ahead and get to logging on off, folks. Get us a little dinner going. I'll take my little dog for a walk. Okay. Thank y'all. Everybody stay safe and please pass this information on. Let folks know. Pass around the toolkits, everything. And let's help spread the word.
Yes, ma'am.